Dana, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your Praxis story, everything that you've accomplished since the start of the program to where you are today. Would you mind by kicking things off and just kind of giving maybe like the quick 2-minute version of why you started the program and what your results from the program were?
I started Praxis in November or December of 2 years ago, I think. And I was in school for social work. And I was like in this place in life of like really wanting to be able to help people. Um, and thinking that social work was the best route for me to go at that time. And a friend of a friend's mom approached me at a gathering and kind of asked like what I was up to, and was like not super impressed with my answer apparently. And she kind of had this response of like, you seem like you don't really know what you're doing or like why you're doing what you're doing. Have you considered doing Praxis? And like I had heard about Praxis for like a couple of years prior to that, and people had suggested it, and I was really like not totally sold on it, because my impression was that it was for people who like knew that they wanted to be like the next great CMO, or were these like superpower like hustler like salespeople that were like dead set on their course. And I was like, I want to help people in my life, and I don't care about like, you know, sales or like whatever that business thing is. Like that's like almost like I'm better than that. And so then there was like a couple of years of like resistance to the concept of Praxis, because like I had no idea what it was really actually about. And then when the mom of a friend who had gone through the program approached me about it, and I was in this place of like, okay, I'm in school because I want to help people, but I'm feeling like the help that I want to like bring is like not actually, I'm not going to be able to do that like through this program that I'm in school. She brought Praxis back up to me, and I actually took the time to like go onto their website and like read through everything that it's about, and I was like, wow, like this is amazing, because I had the impact of business and entrepreneurship as a tool for good and making an impact on people's lives, and helping people, had been highlighted to me. And so then this program that's like, let's train kids on how to think with an entrepreneurial mindset and like get them skills on the job, and like not spend time in programs that aren't getting them to where they want to be. Like everything just clicked, and I was like, this is going to be so wild, because I am also like kind of the odd one out in that I loved school. I was not like the I hate college kind of a dropout. Like I really loved it. And so going into the Praxis mode of like self-directed everything was like different for me. But just the concept of like, let's help kids or like young adults figure out what they want to do and what they're good at and what makes them come alive, like through doing it in an entrepreneurial setting, was amazing. And so that's like why I was doing and why I did do it. Does that answer the question, or did I miss a piece?
No, that answers it great. Yeah, let's definitely start with your beginning. So you were going to school for social work. What else were you doing on the side at the time?
So I was also working with my family in their business. We live on a farm here in Minnesota, and my mom was running an artisan bread subscription, and so I had helped her kind of like transition her like once a week market baking experience into this like year-round bread subscription. So I had like helped her build the website and like get that up and running as like a like through the year operation. And then they also, in addition to like doing all of the regular farm stuff of like raising cattle and harvesting crops, they had also started this new endeavor where they were doing wood-fired oven, or wood-fired pizza in a brick oven. And it was like it is, it's still going on, but it's like a mobile endeavor. So they would like take it around to like different events and wedding receptions and whatever. So I was helping them do like marketing stuff and social media management of that, and also like actually helping make pizzas. So I was like kind of like doing farm stuff and pizza stuff and bread stuff, in addition to some like super basic like social media and website stuff.
When you were helping with your family with all of those endeavors, did it ever click for you that you kind of had an interest in business and growing businesses, or you just more so felt like it was a duty that you were performing for your family?
I think there were definitely days when one of those was stronger than the other, but overall, I did really feel like it was something that I was interested in, business and marketing kind of. I had the opportunity to work with another businesswoman here in town who ran a marketing consulting company, and so I worked with her in like a different part of her business, but I was able to like pick up on a lot of concepts of what she was doing in digital marketing, and I was like, this is really cool. And that's kind of where that started happening originally, was that idea of like you can impact people through business and like have like do good through business, and change lives. And so I was able to take like some of those concepts that I learned from her, apply them like with my family, and was able to be like, okay, this is something that I'm interested in, which is also what made like Praxis make sense, because I was like, I can grow, like this is a tiny tiny little seed of like what I'm doing with my family. Like Praxis is the perfect like incubation space.
Yeah. And then on top of all that, you were balancing school, studying to be a social worker. You said that you really enjoyed school. What was it in particular that, kind of made you want to exit the program, that made you feel unfulfilled from it?
Yeah, so I was actually doing social work because I wanted to be a counselor, and so I decided to do the social work route instead of like the psychology route. um, and I just felt like, looking at the systems that are in play, like in this country, especially, like the systems are really broken. And social work is like a super vital piece of that puzzle. And like they're doing like so much good for the people that they're interacting with. But for me, it felt so frustrating because I was like, I want to be able to change everything and like fix it on like a bigger level, and like I'm one person and I can't do that. And it just was this sense of like, I know that I have like other passions and skills that I wanted to develop, that were like in that sense of like communication, like through writing, and general like entrepreneurial like leanings, that I just like midway through the semester, I just knew inside that this is not the right place for me to be at this point in my life. um Not to say that like in the future maybe someday it won't become an option again, but like right now it's really important for me to like hone some of these other skills and passions, um that like aren't being developed in this program because of the nature of like what it's for. So I was literally like, okay, do I switch? Do I do like a communications degree? Do I do an entrepreneurship degree? It feels like it defeats the purpose to go to college for entrepreneurship. Like that's like two opposite ends of the spectrum. So I was like going through all of this stuff, and then when um Praxis was recommended to me, and they're like, write for a month and do these projects and learn about marketing or sales or whatever and business and entrepreneurship, I was like, okay, this checks all the boxes and boxes I didn't even know existed, so let's do it.
I love that. All right, so then let's fast forward a little bit. You had that conversation with the friend of a friend's mom. You dove back in, did research on us. What was the moment where you were like, okay, this is the next move. Like I'm ready to apply.
I mean, it was pretty instantaneous. um I just like read a ton of the content like from the Praxis blog. I remember reading the blog post from Isaac Morehouse that was like, I think it's like the Praxis warning label post or whatever, and I was like, oh man, like what am I even thinking? Like, can I do this? And then I was like, well, I can apply, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, I'll give it my best shot. And so it was just like it was really just, you know, I really believe in like timing on like the big picture, like life and kind of like world level, and it was the right timing, and something in my spirit clicked, and I knew that it was right.
So applying to the program and then getting in, how are you feeling about starting? Were you nervous?
I was super nervous because I got added to the Slack, and I was like reading all of these things and reading the posts and looking at the websites of the other participants, and immediately like comparison, imposter syndrome kicked in like hardcore. I was like, I never sold people stuff when I was a kid to try to like, you know, hustle my way as like a 12-year-old. Like, I never did that, and I never did that. Like, what am I even doing with my life? Why am I here? And then I saw a video from another participant about him sharing like his about me, and it was very missions focused and people focused, and about like doing this for a purpose greater than yourself. And that was a moment that I was like, okay, like it's okay to be in this and not be like a top salesperson already. Like, there are also people here who are here because they love people and because they love God, and they want to use their skills to like walk in that direction. And that was when I was like, okay, it's gonna be okay. But then, you know, yeah, it was good. So
So then also starting the program and kind of going through all of those emotions, did you have a really clear idea for the result that you wanted, or were you just kind of going along for the ride?
um I had a clear picture of what I wanted in some ways. And I just feel like it was also maybe different than a lot of like what I was seeing reflected back to me. So I knew that there were like a lot of things about myself that I wanted to change and develop, but I didn't have a clear picture about like, oh, I want to be living in like San Francisco, working at whatever, a startup from San Francisco, doing like a marketing role. I didn't have a clear direction in terms of that, but I knew like a lot of myself that I wanted to change and develop over the course of the program.
Do you have any specific examples of those things you wanted to develop?
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing was like I wanted to hone a skill set. Just because that was one of the things that like when I was in school, I was like, if I drop out right now and try to make a living, like what could I even do? Because I feel like I don't have any skills that are valuable in like the current marketplace. And so I was really wanting to hone a skill set that I could stand on if I needed to. And I wanted to kind of like develop like more self-discipline in like a professional context, in how like I interacted with people and how I approached projects, um, and delivered those. So those were a couple of things off the top of my head that I wanted to get out of it, like as I was going into it. I also wanted to get an idea of how um, to like grow a business. So the bigger picture of starting and building and like having the pieces fit together, as opposed to like I want to learn just about operations. I wanted to know like how business functions and runs. So that was kind of, I think, the last piece, or like from memory right now, the last piece of like what I was looking for.
Yeah, yeah. Were there any things that you learned that surprised you that you ended up learning those things, whether it was about yourself or about business?
in the boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like one of the biggest things that I learned, or some of the biggest like paradigm shifts that happened over the course of the Praxis bootcamp is like, number one, that pretty much everything in life comes down to like how you frame it. So like, you know, your experience selling bread at a farmer's market might not seem relevant to like the marketing role that you're trying to land, but like if you can identify what is valuable about that experience and then communicate it in a way that shows that value, that's like all the difference. So that was really big for me. And then also, oh, just like in the placement process, the experience of looking through like hundreds of role descriptions and job listings, it was this moment of like, wow, there is so much opportunity out in the world. And like, I'm from this small town in rural Minnesota, like lived on a farm, and like seeing all of these options listed out in front of me, it was like, the world is so big. Like, why did I ever think that my options were like teacher, mom, or nurse? Like, there's so much in the world. And it's like, it's a matter of like just going out there and getting it. Like, I mean, that sounds cheesy, but like really it was just like this shift of there's like so much opportunity. So I don't know if like that answers the question about like what I learned in regards to like what I was looking for, but I feel like those were two of like the really big like shifts that happened over the course of the program.
No, those are like awesome shift realizations to be aware of, especially the second one. When you look back at like you at the start of the program, and I know we haven't talked about yet like your results and where you ended up working and all of that, but even just from like Dana's first day in Praxis and then Dana's last day in the boot camp or last day in placement to when you get your job offer, like before you started your job, what were those big changes that you noticed in yourself? Like what made you feel prepared to step into the really, challenging and exciting role that you did end up stepping into?
So the way I felt prepared, like going into my role after boot camp, or like different from when I started out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like one of the biggest ways is just like everything that I did in the boot camp. I was like convinced in my mind that I was like not going to be able to do it when it was like handed to me. Like I had built a website before for my family, but like building one for myself was like, how am I going to ever do this? And like I remember the first blog post that I wrote for myself took me like 3 days of like excruciating, like pouring over and over and over and like changing this one blog post, and then like by the end of it being like, oh, okay, so I did that and it worked out just fine, and I eventually learned how to spend less than 3 days like writing one blog post and all of these different things. And so I just feel like Praxis, the boot camp part of it really helped cultivate that sense of like things look really big until you like start doing it, and then you like find out that you can do it. And another big one was just like even editing videos during one of the modules, like having to do this like video series project. I am not especially skilled in video editing by any means. I am no like YouTube star, but the beginning of that month compared to the end of that month, like there was a marked difference in like the amount of time and stress and like tears involved with creating the finished project. And so it really just was like this seemed overwhelming in the beginning and you still did it, and so like this next thing looks super overwhelming, so like just start moving, and like chances are you'll be able to do that too.
Yeah, definitely. What was the most challenging thing that you encountered during boot camp?
I feel like the most challenging thing during the boot camp was like fighting my own like self-doubt and everything. Like honestly, I don't know if that's a cop out, but um like video editing is something that I had like very little experience doing before. I had done much more writing, and so that was like technically probably the hardest thing to learn and do um through the boot camp. But like in everything, what was the most difficult was like overcoming this sense of like I'm not good enough to be doing this, or like I shouldn't even be here. And so like the practice of like overcoming that um was really valuable, and was also the hardest part of everything for me.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's continue on to your placement process and your offer. What was the company that you ended up getting a job offer from? What was your role, and what was that whole experience like for you?
Yeah. So I got an offer from Hapte Group, which is um an operational consultancy that helps startups enter and scale in the US market. Um, they were it was like an interesting connection because I like never saw a job description. I really didn't know a lot about it, but one of the Praxis advisors like reached out to me and was like, "Hey, they're looking for a person. Do you want to like have an interview?" And I was like, "Okay, that sounds great." And it was the role was in New York City, and in all of my like searching for places to go get a role at, New York was a place that I had been like actively avoiding, because I was like, that's not for me. Like New York stands for all these things I don't believe in, and also I'm from like a town that's tiny. I live on a farm. There's no way I could do New York, and all this stuff. And then yeah, I interviewed, and it was this like really intense experience where um I I was like, that was just like an interesting conversation, and it was like yeah, I didn't really know what to think about it initially. Again, because I was like, I don't really know what this company does. Like, it was a really young company. There's not a lot of info on their website, but it seems legitimate, and like Praxis is recommending it. And then I didn't hear anything for like a week, and I was like, well, that was like nice, and I guess nothing's gonna come from it. And then they reached out to me again, and they're like, hey, do you want to have a second interview? And so I did, and then they sent me an offer, and it was just like this whirlwind of exciting things that happened, and I was like, okay, I guess I am moving to New York in like 2 weeks, and I don't know anything about New York, and we'll just like make it happen. But um the role that was like pitched to me was like an operations slash growth hacker kind of a role. But like I said, there was no job description, and I didn't really know a lot about it. And so when I actually got there, um, there was this like period of time when we were all kind of like figuring out what I was doing. And so it started out kind of in this space of like brand and marketing, because they wanted me to help like make more of a presence for them, because they were such a young company, that like there was no Instagram account, like the website was like very basic. And So I was gonna like help build that up, but then because there were like other needs that were more pressing, like in the internal structure of the company, like I kind of shifted into more of an operations role, where I was like doing a lot of like helping build out documentation for internal procedural stuff. And the whole thing was super exciting to me because because it was so small and so young, I got to see like how it was built from the ground up, basically, and get that bigger picture of how a business works, like how a company is formed, and like not just getting a taste of this one thing. It was like that classic like wear many hats kind of a experience. So that was really exciting. And then so after I like spent a little bit of time in the operations world, I ended up getting shifted back into marketing, and that's where I stayed basically through the rest of my time there.
What kind of work did you do once you transitioned back to marketing?
So I focused a lot on like growing their LinkedIn presence, because the majority of their audience was living on there, and so there was a lot of like LinkedIn engagement. I wrote a lot of like blog content. We did some video content. We started a newsletter that I ran. A lot of event stuff also. So we were also involved with a pre-accelerator in New York. The two co-founders of Hap Day were also the co-leaders of this other organization, and so like just helping with like creating collateral for any events that was happening in regards to that, or any events that we were running, like all social media documentation of events that were happening and going to happen, and like website edits. They also gave a lot of workshops to accelerators and other programs, or like schools or entrepreneurial programs in New York City. And so like helping create or edit or streamline presentations, or like building out documentation for that for internal use and reference. So there was a lot of that. And then like towards the end of my time there, the company itself started shifting into more of like an educational presence. And so they ran a sales boot camp, which is what they're like moving into, to be focusing on primarily. And so I got to help like do all of the collateral creation for like prepping and like working with sales mentors, and all like the relationship management for the people who were going to be involved in coming in that way, and like making sure that they had promo materials to go out. So like there was like a lot of random stuff in it that all kind of fit together, that was a lot of fun.
How did you navigate learning how to do all that stuff for the first time? Because I imagine that could be kind of intimidating. Like you step into a New York City based company, you're with people who are like experienced, founders and just very experienced in the startup space, and then you step in and you're like, okay, I need to learn all of this and I need to learn it very quickly. How did you do that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was like doing it and then getting feedback and doing it again and again. So, like even just like as basic as, okay, now I'm like used to using Canva and fighting with Google Slides, and this is just not enjoyable, and like Googling thousands of ways to like make things less painful. So like Google was my best friend. HubSpot had a ton of resources for like content creation and like just brand building in general. So that was really great. There's other like marketing and like creation agencies that have a lot of like resources out there. So I would just like read tons of articles on how to do things and then like try to incorporate it as best as I could. And then even just like the Praxis weekly sessions in the apprenticeship phase of it was really great because that was like being able to talk through things, even if it was less about like how do I do this like specific technical thing and more about like how do I like fulfill this like area of my role that I'm just like uncertain about, was really helpful to be able to talk through it with peers and also people like ahead of me in their own careers and just like life in general.
Yeah, that is a really good, supportive resource to have available to you. What would you say is the biggest top number one thing that you're so happy that you learned from working with Half Day?
Oh man. There's so much. I feel like so again, this is like reflective of like what my desire was going into this, because it has always been about people for me. And being at this company was really amazing the because of like how the culture was internally, so carefully cultivated and intentional. And so being able to see people like come in and work and then leave, because we had a lot of international students come and like work with us for internships. And so it was this really cool like experience of like having someone for a period of time and then like they just move on. And so like seeing how someone can come in and like because the founder was really intentional about like not treating an intern like the common perspective of like an intern, and like giving them real responsibility and real tasks and much more in line with like the Praxis idea of like learn your job by doing a job, not just like getting coffee. Because of that like responsibility that was like given to them, there was so much lasting impact in each of their lives, and being able to see like people that I never even got the chance to work with, but like heard stories of like them working and then like seeing where they are now and what they're doing and what they're building, and then the people that I did get to work with who have like now gone on to do other things in their like school process or career, and like hearing them articulate the impact that like being a part of this company had, that was just like so huge to me, because it is exactly like this thing that I was hoping to find, of being like you can work for a company and have an impact and like you be impacted, and like the world is going to be like changed in the like circumference of like each of those people, and just like the multiplying effect that can happen through something like that. So like it wasn't like one lesson like wow, I'm really glad that I learned how to like build a really great like onboarding process, because I had a colleague who did that and she was like amazing. She just like built this incredible thing. Like that would be really cool. But like for me, just like seeing this process of a business having impact on people's lives and those lives impacting other lives was so valuable, and like just this huge confirmation of what I was like hoping could exist in this world, and like it did, and I saw it and I got to be a part of it, and it is really amazing.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Okay, the last question that I'll ask you is, if you were to give advice to a version of you, so let's say somebody who's younger in school, maybe they're studying social work because they want to be a counselor, and they're just not feeling that fulfillment that they want to get out of school and the current path that they're on. What advice would you give to them? And yeah, what would you recommend for them forging their path forward?
I would say do not feel obligated to stay in the place where you are just because you started that, or because you think that's what you're supposed to be doing, or that because at one point in life you thought you knew that was what was right. And give yourself the space to change your mind and to try something that might seem super overwhelming and impossible to do, because like letting yourself have that opportunity of trying something like that, either you're going to be able to do it and know that you could, or you'll know that you can't and that you like don't have to worry about it anymore. But like either way, you're going to learn so much in the process, that you should not be scared of like making the wrong decision. So don't do anything out of fear or obligation.
I love that. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dana. It's been awesome to dive into your story a little bit, and I hope we get to hear from you soon.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful chatting.